G'day guys, Disney Dave coming at you once again from Down Under with another installment in Behind the Classics. Today we are taking a look at the third film released from Walt Disney Animation Studios. It is the film that is arguably Walt Disney's most ambitious feature ever, and the one that truly cemented him as one of the greatest filmmakers and cinematic innovators of all time. Released in 1940, it is of course Walt Disney's musical masterpiece, Fantasia. I have discussed Walt Disney's pioneering efforts when it comes to animation as a visual art form, but one thing I have only briefly skimmed across is his experimentation with sound and music. When Steamboat Willie was released in 1928, it was of course the very first cartoon to have been produced with synchronized sound. This is an element that Walt would further experiment in with his Silly Symphony shorts. Yes, these shorts were mainly a way for Walt to experiment with cinematic animation techniques and colours, but they were also used by Walt to further explore the relationship between music and the moving image. As Walt's Silly Symphonies rose with critical acclaim, the era of Mickey Mouse mania that had ushered in after his appearance in Steamboat Willie had begun to dwindle out by the mid-1930s. In 1936, in an effort to repopularize Mickey Mouse, Walt had the ambitious plan to combine both the Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphonies series for a special event, a deluxe cartoon short. The Silly Symphonies cartoons were known for their trademark slapstick comedy and of course their use of classical music. However, Walt wanted to make something bigger and bolder, a short where sheer fantasy unfolds. He believed that action, controlled by a musical pattern, has great charm in the realm of unreality. He wanted music to drive the narrative, not the narrative to drive the music. Walt wanted Mickey Mouse to meet with classical music, and he set out for the rights to Paul Dukas' orchestral piece, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Mickey was even given a modern redesign, transforming him into his incarnation that we know today. At a chance encounter, Walt happened to meet the conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, Leopold Stokowski, at a restaurant in Hollywood. When Walt ran his idea by him, Stokowski was immediately interested. He was supposedly so ecstatic about the idea that he even offered to score the short free of charge. In January of 1938, animation began on the short using Walt's finest men, and the score was recorded in a 3-hour session. However, Walt's ambitions for the short continually rose the production costs, reaching $125,000, the equivalent of $2.1 million in 2017. Upon the realization that the short's total almost quadrupled that of a regular Silly Symphony short, Walt and brother Roy came to the conclusion that the cartoon would not possibly make the entire budget back on its own, and decided that something else needed to be done with the short. It was then that Walt decided to produce an entire feature made completely of shorts set to famous pieces of classical music, where the music would be used to inspire the stories and guide their narrative. It was as if Walt were creating his very own concert. In fact, the film was given the tentative title of The Concert Feature. The film's title would of course eventually become Fantasia, a word defined as a musical composition based on several familiar tunes. As soon as Walt and his story team had decided on a further 7 classical pieces to build animated sequences around, production went into full swing. With stories written and storyboards and concepts drawn, Walt gave his animators free rein. He wanted the film to be as experimental as possible and let his animators draw how they wanted and use whatever colours and techniques they felt necessary. The film resulted in 8 incredible cartoon shorts, each completely different in style, tone and design than the last. It was the ultimate showcase of spectacular animation, presenting colours and techniques rarely seen in animation to great effect. All in all, Fantasia was created with the help of over 1,000 artists and technicians. Stokowski and his orchestra recorded the score, and in another innovative move, Walt and Roy hired RCA technicians to develop a new sound system known as Fantasound. So the audience felt as if the orchestra was performing live in front of them. Fantasound would go on to become the first ever stereophonic sound system used for a film, forcing theatres to install new sound systems and making Fantasia the first film to be presented with a surround sound mix. Walt was so impressed with the film that he initially planned on re-releasing it every few years, but with one original sequence being substituted for a new sequence upon every subsequent release, so that audiences would see a new film every single time they saw it. Though the film opened to critical acclaim, with some critics already heralding it as a masterpiece, sadly the film ended up underperforming at the box office, with audiences thinking the film to be pretentious and unappealing. Add on top of that the dwindling number of theatregoers during the war. The film ended up losing $894,000 of its $2 million budget. That's the equivalent of a $15 million loss in 2017. Sadly, this loss also quashed Walt's plans for further releases of the film. Walt's grand idea was, however, realised much later when his nephew Roy E. Disney led the studio in the creation of Fantasia 2000, a film made of a series of completely new sequences, and of course the re-edition of Walt's original Sorcerer's Apprentice cartoon. The movie is one of the greatest examples, if not the greatest example, of how music can be used in cinema, not only to evoke emotions, but to quite simply tell a story. Fantasia is in essence a silent film. There's very little dialogue here, certainly none in the animated sequences. The film relies only on music to guide the narrative, and in some instances stand in for sound effects that would otherwise be utilised in a regular film. The crashing of drums and cymbals creating stamping of enormous dinosaurs. The Celesta piano signifying the light footsteps of fairies. Speaking on Fantasia, Walt said, "In our ordinary stuff, our music is always under action, but on this, we're supposed to be picturing the music, not the music fitting our story. I cannot think of another movie which uses music, and music only, to such an incredible effect." I love Fantasia so much. It's not only one of my favourite films of all time, but it has been one of the greatest tools for myself as an independent filmmaker. I've often found myself writing with the film playing in the background, the music and visuals sparking my creative brainwaves and inspiring me like nothing else can. Not only has the film's score become my favourite Disney soundtrack, but some of the movements have become some of my favourite pieces of music ever written. Fantasia has opened my mind unlike any other film. It has played an enormous part in my love of classical music and the ballet. It has taught me how to find musicality, not only in the moving image, but in life itself. Seriously, find yourself a nice tranquil spot. Pump Fantasia's soundtrack into your earbuds and watch the world around you move in time with the music, like poetry in motion. The film has also taught me so much more about storytelling and filmmaking than anything else has. It's one truly special movie that can grab you by the heart, pull you in, and take you to another world completely. Fantasia is Walt's true masterpiece. The film that proved animation could be more than just cartoons. And as such, this truly remarkable film takes out the title of my #1 Disney animated movie of all time. Thank you for joining me for this installment of Behind the Classics. If you've enjoyed this mini documentation and would like to join me for future installments, to make sure you keep up to date, please, after the jump, hit subscribe. Thank you once again for watching, and to absolutely everybody out there, I hope you have a magical day.